It is impossible for me to imagine, dear daughter, that I will never see you again, that I will never be able to hug you again. I would like the opportunity, even for the last time, to caress you and comb your hair. I say goodbye to you, and I promise that until the last moment of my life I will give you reasons to be proud of me. These words belong to Olga Benario, a woman who was a prisoner in the Ravensbruck concentration camp. While she was locked up, she wrote a farewell letter to her daughter, as she knew that sooner or later death would arrive. Life inside this site was short and cruel, in large part because of the chilling tortures administered by Nazi guards. Do not move from your screen, because in the next few minutes we'll tell you everything about the punishment of the prisoners in the Ravensbruck camp. But before we continue, we are very happy to tell you that this video is sponsored by Aura, an incredible tool that will help you protect all your data on the internet. It is not news that all our information is available to anyone on the internet, and that happens because there are brokers that are in charge of compiling all your information and selling it to other companies or people who request it to offer you something, spam you, or for even worse reasons. Aura will identify these brokers and remove all your private information. It will even remove you from spam and robocall lists. Aura also monitors your emails and passwords to see if they were involved in a data breach and exposed on the dark web, and gives you recommendations on what to do. Plus, it has a VPN, password manager, credit monitoring, and just about every internet security tool you'll ever need, all in one app. You can register using my code, aura.com/militaryhistory, or by scanning the QR on the screen, and try the application for 2 weeks, completely free of charge. Check how many brokers share your information and don't wait any longer to protect it. You can thank me later. I'll leave the links for you in the description and in the comments. Ravensbruck was a German concentration camp reserved exclusively for women. It operated between 1939 and 1945 in the north of the country, just 90 kilometers from Berlin. It is estimated that during the time that its doors remained open, about 132,000 prisoners passed through this site. All of them went through a hellish experience that began from the moment they were admitted. The first thing that was done was to strip the inmates of their personal possessions, so that their clothes and valuables were confiscated. Next, a number was tattooed on their arm with which they were identified by the authorities of the site. This was just the beginning of a lurid process of dehumanization designed to break the minds and will of the victims. Before being assigned a barracks to live in, the women had to undergo a rigorous inspection by a doctor. This functioned as a first form of torture, since the prisoners' genitals were manipulated without their consent. On the other hand, their mouths were inspected to see if they had any gold teeth. If this were the case, the doctor wrote it down on a form so that later, once the inmate was killed in the gas chamber or died of exhaustion, the tooth would be pulled from her corpse. At Ravensbruck, female inmates had to submit to a strict disciplinary code, which stipulated penalties for acts of insubordination and disrespect to guards. This, added to the arbitrariness of the top brass of the field, made the punishments something habitual, one more part of the infernal routine of this place. Over time, the prisoners began to identify when they would be subjected to torture. When they were summoned to the central courtyard of Ravensbruck, they would panic, since this was the beginning of a long session of suffering. Take, for example, the testimony of Francine Bryant, a survivor who remembers it this way: "There was no fixed time to call us, sometimes it was daytime and sometimes it was night. They forced us to leave our barracks and stand in the yard for hours. For reasons we couldn't understand, we weren't allowed to walk or move a single muscle. Usually this happened on Sunday afternoons and holidays, as those were the times when the kitchen was closed. We were not fed and we were exhausted." Some inmates remember that they had to remain on their feet for 7 hours, from 3 in the afternoon to 10 at night. This punishment was particularly cruel in winter and summer, when temperatures could cause a woman to succumb to hypothermia or faint from the heat. When this happened, they were kicked to the ground or savagely beaten by the guards, who were on the lookout, walking among the inmates in a threatening manner, attentive to who did not comply with the punishment guidelines. These group torture sessions were organized when a prisoner accidentally broke a window or inadvertently caused minor material damage to the facilities. In this way, in the event of a mistake by just one, all her companions in the barracks had to take responsibility. The inmates' uniforms were black and white, although due to the impossibility of cleaning themselves, and due to frequent corporal punishment, their clothes were gray and red. The vast majority of the inmates had scars, bruises, and poorly healed wounds. The way to punish disrespect, such as not greeting a guard or not showing up for daily checkups, was through strenuous physical exercise. The women were forced to remove their trousers and squat, standing on their fingertips with their arms stretched out in front of them. A guard would yell at them every couple of seconds to stand up properly, then order them to return to their previous position. This sequence could be repeated for an hour or two, until the women were exhausted with numb arms and legs. One of the favorite punishments of the SS consisted of posting a score of men at a gate. Every time a group of female prisoners had to walk around, the guards beat them in the back with batons, to the point where many of them ended up with broken bones. During the night, the women returned to their barracks after a grueling day of forced labor and cruel punishment. However, even at that moment they could not rest, since they had to share the beds of 3 or 4, which made it impossible to sleep comfortably. Thus, not only did their bodies fall apart from the beatings, but they also woke up with contractures and exhausted muscles. The harshest punishment at the Ravensbruck concentration camp was reserved for the worst acts of indiscipline, such as assaulting guards or attempting to escape. Although in theory it was used as a sanction and a way to rehabilitate a rebel prisoner, in practice it functioned as a death sentence due to its extreme level of violence. The woman was to remove her pants and then stand still while she received 25 blows to her bare buttocks from a stick. Many times, the instrument had a rubber tip to make the pain even worse. The prisoner screamed as the blows tore at her flesh and a torrent of blood poured down her legs, pooling around her. At these sessions, there was always an SS doctor present, whose task it was to monitor the woman's heart rate. If her heart was racing too fast and she looked like she was going to have a heart attack, the beating had to stop, so she wouldn't die immediately. This did not mean that the woman escaped the penalty, but simply that the torture resumed the next day, when her pulse was already in order. The punishment ended once the 25 lashes were completed. Usually, the recluse died from blood loss, although she sometimes survived for a few more weeks. In these cases, her wound, which was never properly treated, became infected and caused fatal septicemia. As we see, it is clear that the Ravensbruck camp was one of the most abominable places of the Third Reich. We reached the end of the video and we want to ask you, what do you think was the wildest punishment in Ravensbruck? Leave us your answer in the comment box below and don't forget to subscribe to our channel to learn about many more military events that left their mark on history.